My name is Andrea Copping with Pacific Northwest National Laboratory and Ocean Energy Systems Environmental. And today's webinar is entitled Planning Ahead to Address Environmental Effects of Marine Renewable Energy. Next slide, please. The objectives, I'm sorry, there's a barking dog here. The objectives of today's webinar are to share tools and resources that will help in planning environmental effects of marine energy. We hope to engage the broader marine renewable energy community so that we can increase collaboration, we can share knowledge, and we can really help raise our understanding of environmental effects of marine energy. Next slide, please. Now, marine energy for the purposes of today's webinar includes wave, tidal, ocean current, also ocean thermal and salinity gradients. However, it does not include offshore wind. This is really just the way things are divided up. However, if your interest today is offshore wind, I think you'll find a lot of this material is applicable to offshore wind as well. So for today's webinar, we have three speakers. The first being Michaela Freeman with Pacific Northwest National Laboratory and representing OES-Environmental, who will talk about a management measures tool for marine energy that we've developed. Our second speaker, we're very pleased to have our colleague Iván Galparazo from AZTI in Spain talking about their WEC-ERA tool. And our third speaker is Zach Barr with Kearns and West in the US, who will be talking about Marine Energy Environmental Toolkit for permitting and licensing. Next slide, please. Just in case you haven't been on other webinars with us, a quick identity check of who we are. We are representing Ocean Energy Systems Environmental. This is a task that was stood up under the International Energy Agency Ocean Energy Systems group of countries. The task began in 2010, so we've been running about 12, 13 years now. And the purpose of the task is to examine the environmental effects of marine energy in such a way that we can advance the marine energy industry in a responsible manner. The way these tasks work is one country leads with others participating. This one is led by the US with the US Department of Energy's Power Technologies Office in the lead, and is implemented by our laboratory, our national lab, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. For the current work, we have 16 member nations, and you see the flags down there. We're very fortunate to have a wide, very active group of participants from each of these countries. Next slide, please. In case any of you are not familiar, I just wanted to draw your attention to TETHIS, which is our online knowledge management system that has documents, which includes peer-reviewed papers, reports, other media, has over 4,000 of these hosted online, completely open. It also supports environmental effects of wind energy as well as marine energy, both offshore wind and onshore wind. In addition, TETHIS has a lot of other content. It's got tools. It has the management measures tools that Michaela will be talking about in a moment, but it's also where we put our recordings of webinars, and all the other work that we've been doing with risk retirement. It also has an educational resources page that for STEM students all the way from elementary school all the way through graduate school. And you'll see that our colleague Debbie Rose has been putting some of the links in the chat. There's the link for TETHIS, so you can just click on that. So we hope you will join us. We send out an every other week newsletter called TETHIS Blast, and you can sign up for that online as well. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our first presenter, Michaela Freeman.
Thank you, Andrea. So today I will be presenting our management measures tool, which, as Andrea mentioned, is hosted on TETHIS. So this is an online tool that compiles management or mitigation measures that have been used for current or previous marine renewable energy or MRE projects. The online tool allows for users to search, filter, and download information. And it was last updated, or rather we did a big push to update it from its previous form in August of 2022. And we'll continue to update it every 6 months to a year, as I'll show you a bit later. We have a note where we update the tool so you can see when the last update was. The update in August of 2022 was the first update we had done in a while, and it was really to improve user experience, to improve some of the functionality of the tool and the way users can use it. And then, of course, to add a lot of additional information on new management measures and projects. And the update was done with our PNNL and OES-Environmental team in partnership with Aquaterra. So a little bit of background before I dive into the tool itself. So this came from, it started in 2017 actually, at a workshop that was held by OES-Environmental and ORGIP Ocean Energy. And this was really to discuss management measures as a way to ensure that consenting for marine renewable energy could move forward in the face of uncertainty. As we know, certain environmental risks from MRE devices are not really well understood, and this has led to potentially onerous monitoring requirements. So in order to kind of help with that, in order to safely and responsibly deploy MRE devices, robust management measures could be used in the place when we don't quite know all the answers or there's some uncertainty there. Then you can monitor and collect data to help determine the risk. And from there, it can be determined potentially if you can dial back management measures or even remove them. So this management measures tool is really a reference to help apply those robust management measures in the face of uncertainty and manage potential risks from future projects. We hope that it helps to move projects forward in the face of uncertainty or until a risk can be retired. So for the next several slides, I'm going to walk through with some screenshots on my PowerPoint slide, the tool, and then I'll do a live demo. But I just wanted to first acquaint everyone with what this tool looks like before I do the live demo. So within the tool, you'll find it's a table with some filtering and search functionality to find the different management measures. So I'm going to go across the different information shown in these columns that you'll see. So the first is technology. This is split by type of device, which right now we just have wave and tidal, as that's most of the deployments that we're seeing around the world. The next is the project phase, and this is split out by installation, operation and maintenance, and decommissioning. Then we have stressors and receptors. The stressors are the parts of the device, a result of the device's function or interaction with the device itself that may cause harm or stress, whereas receptors are the marine animals, habitats, and ecosystem processes that may be affected by that stressor. Next, we have the management measure itself. So this is the information hopefully you're coming to find specifically. And this was the measure taken to minimize risk, and it's categorized in 4 different ways: by compliance, by design feature, by mitigation, and by monitoring. And there may be management measures that are applicable to more than one category. So you'll see that as you go through the tool. One thing I do want to note, if you can see my cursor, at the top of stressor, receptor, and management measures here, you'll see there's some text in bold. That's the category that you'll find in the drop-down menus. And the information below is some additional details and description on that specific management measure in this case, or some more details on what stressor and receptor we're looking at. Next are descriptions of any changes that may occur in response to the measure, so implications of that, and these are split out by advantages and challenges. And then last, there are reference documents with additional details on the measure. And these can include environmental impact assessments, licensing documents, monitoring reports. And then we've also included OES-Environmental project metadata forms. I'll show an example of one of these later, but the intent of the project metadata forms is to collect information most of the time directly from a project developer or device developer on a marine renewable energy project around the world that's collected environmental information. So we have those linked here as well when they're relevant. So with that, I'm going to switch over to an online demonstration. So do bear with me as I switch between my different platforms. All right. So I'm going to start us off at the TETHIS page itself, just again to acquaint where you can find this tool. So within the drop-down menus at the top, you'll see that there's a tool drop-down menu. You can find some of those other resources that Andrea mentioned. And the fourth one down is the MRE management measures tool. So if you click on that, it'll take you directly to the page for the management measures tool for marine energy. At the top of the tool, there is some background on why the tool was developed, a bit of that information we went through today, a little bit about the workshop where the tool first came about. And then there's some explanation of the tool itself. I do want to note that we do have additional information for this tool beyond what you'll see down in the table here, and that's contained in a downloadable Excel spreadsheet. And so some of this information that you can get if you download the Excel spreadsheet here, in addition to what's in the tool, you'll find comments from stakeholders on past experiences, cost of the management measure, and when a management measure is needed. This is just some additional information. We may not have it for every single management measure, so we've put it in this downloadable Excel spreadsheet, but it is easily accessible by downloading the form here. Next, we have an instructions document, which just walks users through the tool and provides examples on how to use it. Below that, you'll see this last updated January 2023. We'll always put when we last updated the tool. So we did a little bit of an update before this webinar. And as I mentioned, we're going to strive to update it every 6 months to a year with new management measures or information from projects as they come online. Down below it, you'll see it shows the number of management measures displayed. So right now we have 339 management measures within the tool. This will change as you start to search through the tool, and it'll tell you how many management measures there are related to whatever those search terms that you're looking at. Below the tool is the actual, or below that information is the actual tool itself. And so up at the top here is different ways to filter through the tool or search through it. We have some of those categories I mentioned: technology, management measure, project phase, stressor, and receptor, that you can filter through drop-down menus where you'll see those different categories appear and you can click on them. And then you can also put your search terms here and include that in your search. So I'm just going to show one way to use the search terms. You type in, say, migratory fish, you hit apply, and then it'll show that you have 5 management measures for your migratory fish search term. And then you can scroll through these and see the different information that appears. From there, you can hit reset if you'd like to reset to the original page of the tool and do another search. So from here, I'm going to show 2 examples, and I'll pull out some information to kind of show how you can use the tool and a little bit more in depth what information you can find. So the first one, we're going to use the drop-down menus. You can see the stressors list is quite long. We tried to be really comprehensive in what's included here. So I'm going to start with collision risk, and we'll filter by technology title, since that is the technology where collision risk is our concern. And so you can see for title and collision risk, we have 29 management measures. And I'll just scroll a little bit and find an example. You can see that the information changes based on the different management measures. So each row is a management measure itself. So I'm just going to scroll maybe halfway through the tool and find a good example. They're all good examples, but find an example to show. All right, we'll stop at this one. So here you can see we filtered for tidal technology and we filtered for collision risk. This particular management measure is in the operation and maintenance phase, and the receptor here is marine mammals. The management measure itself is mitigation, monitoring, and design features. So it's applicable to all those different aspects. And you have the details down below, written below the bold categories. And so this management measure is to install a detect and shut down system, suggested using active sonar or other appropriate monitoring equipment. The advantages of this is that it could reduce or remove the risk of collision with the turbine blades, and that it can also help find an effective or efficient pathway through consenting processes if there's a concern, particularly at high sensitivity locations or with particular marine mammals. Some of the challenges here is that this could affect power production as you have to shut down wind and marine mammals in the vicinity. It could be expensive to implement. And then we've also noted here that because you shut down, you're not monitoring animal behavior around an operational turbine. So for this, it doesn't help reduce scientific uncertainty regarding the risk itself. There's some additional challenges here, and anytime you see the read more, that just means there's more information that can be shown. So if you click that button, it'll expand this cell and show all the information contained there. And when you're done reading, you can just click read less. On the right here are all the project documents that are relevant to this management measure. So I'll click on a few and show you some examples. So the first one is I'm going to show a metadata form. So I'm choosing the EMEC Fall Awareness Grid Connected Tidal Test Site. So this is an OES-Environmental metadata form. On the right here, you'll see the contents of what's in the form, and you'll see some details on the project itself, including a link to contact. If you're logged into Tethys, you can get the email address and ask any additional questions or for more data, and then some details on the project site itself. Within this, we have a description of the project, the location, some licensing information, and then some project progress. And because this is a test site, we do link to the deployments that have been there at the test site when we have metadata forms. So those are all these links you'll see here. Below that, we have some information on key environmental issues. Here you'll see there actually a column for mitigation measures here. And then down below all of that information, there's papers, reports, and research studies that are relevant for more information. And then at the very bottom, you can see there's a baseline assessment table, any assessments that occurred baseline, and then you also have a post-installation monitoring table with a lot of information. So these metadata forms are a great source for finding more information on the management measure and more information on the project. And then I also wanted to show, since I already showed EMEC, I'll show a project document from this list as well. So you'll see here, this is the environmental appraisal from EMEC. You can link directly to that document itself, and these documents should all reference that management measure that you found in the tool. So just ways to find additional information. So that concludes my demonstration. I'm happy to answer more questions at the end, and we will have, this tool is ready and available for anyone to start using it. So we look forward to any feedback that you may have. And I think with that, unless Andrea is going to pass it off, I will pass it off to Yvonne.
So thank you very much for this invitation to take part in this event, in this webinar. And I am Ivonne Galvarsoro. I work for AZTI in Spain. And today I will introduce you an environmental risk assessment tool for wave energy converters, which stands for WEC-ERA tool. And I will try to be short, and I also will do a live demo of the tool. But just to a short introduction of the concept of ecological risk. In this case, we adopted the definition of quantitatively or qualitatively determine the possibility of the ecosystem indicator to reach or remain in undesirable state. So for the assessment of the potential risks that could be produced by wave energy converters, we have considered the full ecosystem elements and based on the full list of pressures, ecosystem elements, indicators, and in this case, we adopted the European Marine Strategy Framework Directive, which is the main environmental legislation in Europe. But we adopted this framework because it considers 16 different types of pressures, also known as stressors, according to Michaela's presentation, and 27 ecosystem elements, again, as considered as receptors of those pressures. So in this case, we are considering that with those combination and this framework, we were covering the full marine ecosystem. In this case, the process is based on different phases or steps. And the first one is the identification of the potential risks based on the project characteristics, the types of devices and the magnitude of the project, the likelihood of the production of pressures and their intensity, and together with the ecosystem sensitivity to those pressures, the characterization of the potential ecological risk that could help the assessment by the interpretation and the evaluation of the risks, and in order to inform the potential adoption of management measures based on the hazard identification or the adoption of mitigation measures. So in comparison to other technologies, there is less information, there are less amount of devices and testing sites than for other renewable energy devices. In this case, it was not easy for us to collate all the information on the potential pressures and impacts produced by wave energy converters. So in this case, what we did, it was an expert consultation process to get this type of information. Finally, we reached up to more than 7,000 risk indicators based on the combination of the pressures, ecosystem elements, different technologies. We were also considering the 3 life cycle phases, etc., and more than 400 indicators of sensitivity of ecosystem elements to pressures. So this means that all this amount of information is quite difficult to be used by the end users or our targeted end users. And so for that, what we decided, it was to develop a web app tool that is free. It's free access, and it's online, and this is what it's called, the WEC-ERA tool. And I will try, and let's see if it works. It should be. And just clicking there, you can jump to this to the web app. Okay, so just accept the conditions, and then the user can directly enter into the tool. So as I said, the first thing and the only input that the tool requires to the user is to characterize the project that is being assessed. So for example, in order to characterize the project, we were considering the number of devices, the total consented area, the total installed production capacity, the project duration, etc. So when the user is changing here those parameters, the tool is calculating automatically an indicator of the project magnitude. This is the first thing. Then the user can select the device type that is being assessed. So for example, in this case, I will go for the oscillating wave energy column during the operational phase. And then the user can see which is the pressure production likelihood, the potential level of that pressure, the total pressure, and the total confidence score of that potential pressure. So here you can see the 16 different types of pressures. Here they are described in the lower part of the tool. So in this case, for example, it could be seen that for this device during the operational phase, the potential pressures are related to input of energy, or what is the electromagnetic fields, input of noise, or the potential physical disturbance, etc. So those are potentially the main pressures that could be produced. And here you can see the total confidence of that assessment. So in this case, for example, we can see that, for example, for input of noise or energy, at the same time are those pressures for which we do have less information or the confidence score is lower. Then the user can also jump to see which are the different sensitivity of different ecosystem components for marine mammals, for example, or fish, or seabed, or I don't know, other type of components of the ecosystem. Okay, it failed. Okay, it should work. Now you can see here, for example, the sensitivity of different ecosystem components to those pressures. So for example, here we have selected, this is, for example, for seabed, we can see that the physical loss or physical disturbance produced by wave energy farms are the main pressures for which those ecosystem components are showing highest sensitivity. After that, we also included this Sankey plot, which in fact, it graphically shows what is called the impact chain. Here you can see the device and the phase, which are the expected pressures and which are the receptors. So the user can select different type of devices, different phases, but also you can see here, because the boxes are representing also the number of links. For example, there are no links with the sea level, or there are no interrelationships with, for example, salinity or upwelling, etc. But there are higher number of interactions with fish or birds in this case, or mammals, etc. And you can see here the pressures and the devices. Then this is the output that we can get from the tool. Here you can see in this matrix of pressures and ecosystem components. Okay, so in gray you can see the interactions that we have not identified that could happen. But on the other side, you can see the value of the potential risk of those interactions between the pressures and the ecosystem elements. So this means that somehow what we try to do is, okay, we can put here visually and in a synthetic way the potential interactions or the potential risks of that project defined by the user. So it's a matter of trying to filter all the pressures and ecosystem components. So when the managers or decision makers are assessing a project proposal, they can check which are the potential risks of that device and check if that information exists for that project, or if not, or if those components are present where the farm is going to be constructed or is being consented. So it tries to guarantee that all the components are being considered and and where to focus in the process. And a summary table at the end, in which, okay, the user can also see for different pressures the potential in this case, as we have defined as a big magnitude project, which are the main ecological risks produced by which type of pressure. So as I said, this is because it could be also interesting for the identification of potential mitigation measures. And finally, the user can download a report. I don't know if this is going to work now, but it takes a little bit of time. But finally, the user can get a final report of the whole process. It's like a fact sheet with all the information that we have. Okay, here it is. So the user can see, I mean, like a report of all the information that we have gone through the process. And yeah, and this is interesting because the user can produce different scenarios for different projects and get different reports and compare between them. So coming back, I would like to share with you that, I mean, how the tool is performing or the impact. These are some general data of the tool. The tool was launched in the 1st of August of 2021. Up to now, we have more than 900 users, which is good, from 48 countries. So, I mean, we are quite happy with the results. Even though we would like to continue developing the tool or getting feedback from the users, so that would be very useful for us. And the other thing that I would like to highlight here is that the tool that I have introduced is like it's an interface between all the information that we collected and the final user. But we didn't want this to be a black box or something that is not transparent. So we produced this paper that is there. It's publicly available, or otherwise you can ask it to me and I can send it to you. But all the technical and all the process that we followed to get all the information is there. So at the end, Wekera is just an interface and a synthetic way of looking at the information. I would not like to end this presentation introducing that the Wekera tool is part of another tools that we are producing, because in this case, as you have seen, it's just the environmental risk assessment tool of wave energy devices, but we are also working on the identification of suitable areas for the development of tools, in which we are developing also or integrating information on technical information of the requirements, technical requirements for the development of new farms, socioeconomic risk assessment, or the potential risk between different activities, in order to integrate all that information into more complicated models, but especially explicit, and as I said, integrative models that could inform during the identification of suitable areas for the development of new projects. This is the tool that is being developed at this stage. I will not go into this today because otherwise it would be a too long presentation, but you can access to that information and to the tool, and you can keep in touch with us. And this is the type of output that we could get. This is the first map production that we did for Spain and Portugal. So the final conclusions or remarks that I would like to do is that in our case, the ecological risk assessment is not intended to question the expectation of offshore energy, but at least what we would like to do from the more scientific point of view is to provide information of the potential ecological effects in order to inform the adoption of measures or mitigation measures. And of course, this is very generic, and a good assessment should be evaluated project by project, and it's very site specific. But our scientific contribution is to produce models and tools with a scientific basis and with a target audience or target end user focused on managers or policymakers, industry also, and of course always to make it free and publicly available. Of course, we still need to do more work in order to reduce uncertainties on ecological risks. It's important to promote transparency and sharing of data and information with existing monitoring programs of operational farms, and of course, periodical updates with new information. And thank you very much again for inviting me to present today. And I would like to acknowledge the European project OES-E. That was the project from the H2020 European Commission project that funded this work. So thank you very much. And now I leave the room to the next speaker, Zach Barr.
So as people have shared, my name is Zach Barr. I work with Kearns and West, and I'm the project manager and outreach and engagement lead for the Marine Energy Environmental Toolkit for permitting and licensing. The development of the toolkit was funded by a U.S. Department of Energy grant with partners from the European Marine Energy Center, Electrical Power Research Institute, EcoQuants, Ocean Renewable Power Company, Pacific Energy Ventures, Sandia National Laboratories, Integral Consulting, HT Harvey and Associates. The continuation of this effort is under the U.S. Department of Energy's portal and repository for information on marine renewable energies, or PRIMER, and is being led by Sandia National Laboratories, Integral Consulting, EcoQuants, HT Harvey and Associates, and Kearns and West. So the portal and repository for information on marine renewable energy, or PRIMER, is a program developed in partnership with the U.S. Department of Energy Water Power Technologies Office and researchers from Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and Sandia National Laboratories. And PRIMER consists of several different knowledge hubs that are focused on specific data sets and information related to marine energy, as shown on this slide. And if you're interested in more information on PRIMER, I'll put in a link in the chat. If I can find it, there we go. And the Marine Energy Environmental Toolkit is really a project under PRIMER, and it's aggregates some of the great information that PNNL and other researchers have collected through the different knowledge hubs, and primarily Tethys Environmental. And we'll kind of go into some of the other data sources later, but it's really focused on helping facilitate the permitting and licensing of marine energy in the United States. And our primary audiences are developers and regulators that are in a permitting and licensing process. So the basic concept of the toolkit was focused on how to aggregate existing and different sources of information to create a one-stop shop that can help facilitate an efficient and effective permitting and licensing process. The current time frame to permit a project in the US is around 7 to 8 years, which is pretty long. So we're really focused on trying to reduce that time frame by providing both regulators and developers the latest and greatest sources of information. So in this diagram, you can see at the top kind of our data sources and how they go into the toolkit. And I'll show this a little later in the demo, but the real strength and kind of focus of the toolkit is allowing users to organize the information through tags and spatial queries into custom reports that can be shared with other stakeholders. So really making sure that everyone in the process has the same information. So some of the specific data sources that the toolkit utilizes is academic and gray and white literature from the Tethys Environmental Knowledge Hub, which is developed and managed by PNNL. Precedent-setting documents from previous permitting and licensing process from the FERC e-library, spatial data sets from the Marine Cadastre, which is managed by 2 federal agencies, which is the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, and then regulatory information, which was populated by the original toolkit team, which is hosted on the public wiki OpenEI, which is managed and developed by NREL. And so again, we'll be bringing all this information into the toolkit and allowing users to define what information they're interested in, and the toolkit will organize it into a custom report that allows them to be shared. And if you're interested in exploring some of the sources of the toolkit, I'll be providing them in the chat. Oh, okay, those hyperlinks won't work. I will provide those hyperlinks in a minute after the presentation. Okay, so the data synthesis, as I was kind of talking about before we dive into the toolkit, I want to kind of clarify what I mean by that. We've used the same concept in terms of stressor and receptor that Tethys does. So allowing folks to identify what stressors, so what's being introduced by the project into the environment, and the receptors, which could be, for example, human dimensions like shipping lanes, or things like cetaceans and marine mammals that exist in the project area, and how those two can interact, which may come to potential effects. So again, this is used by Tethys as well, so it allows for really quick and easy pulling of the information from their knowledge hub. And the last piece I want to kind of talk through before I get into the demonstration is how we synthesize the information from the regulations. So the way that we've structured this is to ask a series of questions that can help narrow and identify what jurisdictions, as well as what permits may be required from a state and federal level for a project. And I'll go through this momentarily, but the toolkit really compiles examples of some of those permits from previous processes and gives basic background on the permit and law that it stems from itself. All right, so I'll go into the demonstration now. Oops. And thank you, Michaela, for putting in some of the data sources that I was mentioning. So the toolkit, if you want to join and follow along or just kind of play around by yourself, is marineenergy.app. And so this is the home page. It gives you an idea of how it works. So you can choose what you're interested in, select content based on what you're interested in, and then develop and share reports. We have some information about our main audiences, about how developers and regulators can use the tool in the permitting and licensing process. And then we have kind of a rotating option of different pieces that we have as well. So before I go into the reporting tool, which will be kind of the main focus of the demonstration today, I'll go into the regulations piece. So this is what I was pictured, or that was pictured in the presentation. And so this gives you a series of questions to answer that lead you to different sources of information. So for example, if your project is grid connected, meaning it goes into the power grid, it's yes, FERC is the lead federal agency. And each of these have kind of are clickable hyperlinks that take you to OpenEI. Oh, sorry. It takes you to kind of that, a different page in the toolkit, but allows you to access different pieces of information. And then at the state process as well, you can find additional information on what lead agencies, so you can select the state that you're in. We don't have all states that have coastline in the US, but most that have a lot of marine energy activity, Alaska, for example. And so this gives you links to different references for the various laws and permits that will be required in that state. So you can click on this link and it'll take you to OpenEI. This will link you to other additional resources, including the administrative code in which that review is kind of codified and things like that. So that was just a quick kind of showcase of what the regulations piece is about. So again, it's just a very easy way to go through, ask specific questions about your project to get to various information. So now I'll go into the reporting tool. And so this is the reporting tool. And so what you'll see here is that you have a kind of a configure tab. So this is where you can choose what information you're interested in. So the tags, as I mentioned before, and then any location that you have specific information in. And then here are the different components at the top. And so we have projects. And so this information are existing projects in the US. You can see them on a map. There's also a timeline of the permitting and licensing process. And this gives you the option and ability to click on different projects to see their permitting and licensing timeline. And so when you have this up here, these are links to the actual documents of the draft pilot license applications, final pilot license applications, and the permit issues. So again, a great knowledge hub and information to pull from previous projects that may be similar to the project that you're undertaking right now. We also have the management measures that Michaela reviewed previously. And so this is actually being updated right now, so we don't have exactly everything that Michaela showed. So we'll be working on making sure that it pulls in all the information that they shared previously. Not sure why this isn't working, but it'll be very similar to the table that Michaela showed with different tags of the management measures reviewed. The documents piece is another form of information. And so this is where we have the previous permitting and licensing documents. And so we've added the tags, and we also have some binary filters. For example, if the interaction was presented as a potential interaction, if it was described from observations at the site, if that was included in the monitoring plan or adaptive management plans, if it was included in the protection, mitigation, and enhancements, which are required as part of the FERC license, and then if best management practices were applied. And so rather than just giving you a link to the document as it does in the projects tab, this actually pulls out specific details, what we kind of see as the precedent setting information that is important from that document related to the tag structure that you see. The next piece is the publications. And so this is pulling from the TETHIS environmental knowledge base. So this is access to all the publications on there. And we have kind of the tags from that. As you can see, there's a lot of entries because TETHIS has quite the collection of gray and white literature. And then the spatial is kind of the last one. And so this is pulling from marine cadastre. So this gives you the title of the spatial data set that it's pulling from and the tags which we've applied to it. One thing I will note is that we don't have spatial visualization as part of the toolkit yet. We're kind of exploring that and what that may look like. But what this does is it allows you to kind of, it tells you if you draw a certain spatial query, it tells you if that interacts or touches any data sets within marine cadastre that we've pulled from. And then it'll give you a table of that information. So rather than spatializing that or visualizing the spatial information, it shows you the table of that data information that you interact with based on your spatial query. So now I'll just do a quick kind of run through of how to develop a report. And we do have a video, a how-to guide on our original website that'll run through this, but I'll kind of give you an example. So you start with the tags. And so we have kind of parent tags, which is like current, and then one level under that. So for example, current includes ocean current, riverine, and tidal technologies. So let's say we're interested in current tidal. We also have stressors. So what are we introducing into the environment? For example, if we have noise, you may want to be interested in that and maybe some behavioral interaction. And then receptors in the project area that we're interested in. You may be interested in fish. And let's go to marine mammals. And then we also have phase of the project, management measure, and consequence. You don't have to have tags selected for all of them. So I'll just kind of do a basic one of that. So once we have that selected, we click add. It's taking a little time to add. Oh no. I'm not sure why it's not working. Well, I guess a lot of people did click on the link I provided, and that may be the issue. We'll give it a minute here, but then if it doesn't work, I'll kind of try to share and explain what happens when you generate a report. Okay, so maybe it's not quite working. So what you'll do is when you add a tag, and you can add, okay, so there's the final one. But when you add a tag, the content on the right will change based on the tags that you provide. So for example, in the projects piece, if you select a certain technology or a certain technology, the timeline will only show technologies that are of the similar tag that you selected. So it can help you down select all the projects and information that are on that page. And that's similar with the management measures, where it'll only show rows that include the tags that you selected. Same with the documents and the publications as well, and spatial as well. And what the report does is really compiles all of the information and detail from each of the different components into one HTML file or a URL that you can share externally. And so that way people can get the information that you've extracted from the toolkit in an easy way to make it easier to kind of understand and problem solve collectively on how to permit and license a project. So before I turn it back over for questions, did have some closing thoughts. So we did have, as part of the original development of the toolkit, a pilot testing process where you worked with regulators and developers that are actually going through a permitting licensing process. Based on that kind of experience, we do believe that the toolkit can help facilitate various different phases of developing marine energy project. And the toolkit's framework for aggregating different sources of information can help reduce the use of several tools and organizes the information a little bit more intuitively as a one-stop shop. We do believe that the application to other jurisdictions outside the US may help advance the marine energy as an industry as a whole. And if you're interested in learning more about the toolkit, please feel free to send me an email at zbar@kernswest.com. Thanks, and I hope to answer some of your questions.
So with that, we're coming up towards the end of our time together. I would like to particularly thank the three speakers, Michaela, Iban, and Zach. I think you provided some really wonderful information in a very condensed and short period of time. I'd like to thank everybody for spending your time with us today and the really lively discussion through the chat. There you have our emails if you wish to reach out to any of us. And of course, the recording will have these slides with it. So thank you very much. We're going to conclude the webinar here, and we hope you will take the survey and join us for future webinars. Thank you.